If you have to chase him, then he isn't worth catching. And he shouldn't have put you in a position that you have to even chase him to begin with. But the reality is that life happens, and there's so many different reasons why women find themselves chasing a man, pursuing a man. And some of you may not even realize that you're chasing. You might just think you're doing your part in trying to make things happen. And I applaud your willingness to put yourself out there and be vulnerable. But you have to understand the dangers of chasing a man and the fact that he's not the one for you. And I'm going to break it all down so that you can clearly see the pitfalls here, why he isn't that guy, when he might just be that guy, and just everything you need to understand about this dynamic. So the first thing I want you to consider is he really worth your time? I say this because I see so many scenarios, and let me add this. It's not even just chasing. It's also holding on for dear life to the desire of being with this certain specific man, all right? And I see this scenario with women where what you're trying to hold on to, what you're trying to chase is a guy that when you really break it all down, it ain't really worth it, right? And that's not to even insult the men that you may hold in high regard, but it is to put in perspective that sometimes you get lost and caught up desiring an individual who isn't even truly best for you. So when I say he's not worth it, let's look at it from a couple angles. Number one, let's just look at it from the fact that he doesn't properly fit into your life. So here's the thing. There might be a man that you think highly of, that you really like, and that maybe when you fantasize about the situation, you really want to be with this guy, right? And you don't see any reason not to want to be with this guy. But you're not considering the fact that despite his great qualities, he doesn't really fit in with you. And what tends to happen is that a woman is fantasizing about what she believes it could be, not who he actually is, not what he's actually presenting. It's what you feel like you see in this man that maybe you think you can bring out of him or that you would be able to experience with him if you were in his life or were having a relationship with him. And I always say, listen, don't date someone's potential, date their reality. It doesn't mean some people don't have great potential. It doesn't mean some people won't reach their potential. The reality, unfortunately, is that many do not. Many do not, or even if they could, they may not reach it with you. Why? Because again, they're not a good fit. Good man does not mean right man. Does not mean the man that you can actually share your life with. So you've got to take a step back and understand, are you pursuing the resume on paper? Are you pursuing and holding on to, again, the idea of him and what you think he could be? Or are you accepting the reality of who he is and the fact that you are in a situation where he is not being either receptive to your interests or he is not pursuing you on his at all either, all right? Because again, if he's that great and he's not even trying to engage in this courting with you, then you're only shooting yourself in the foot and wasting your time. So there's that aspect, the fact that he's simply not a good fit despite being a great guy. But then there's also the angle of he's just not that great to begin with. And let's not act like we don't see this. Even if this isn't you specifically going through this, I'm sure if you think about it, you can think of a friend, a family member, someone you've known, acquaintance, that was all into a man, maybe chasing and pursuing, maybe just holding on to the idea of being with him. And when you look at the guy, it's like, for what? Like, what are you doing? And if you are that woman, I don't want you to feel bad. I'm trying to kind of wake you up because, again, it's so easy to fall into this pattern of overlooking the red flags, overlooking the real issues that exist because you want this so bad. And your desire for wanting it stems from deeper rooted issues that you're not properly addressing. Now, we'll get more into that a little bit later. But I really want you to understand that when you find yourself locked into this guy, what are you really holding on to? And why? Why this man? What's so special? If you have to, write it down on a piece of paper. And I'm telling you this because, again, I want you to be able to have clarity in this situation to understand what is actually going on here. Because when I see women getting caught up in chasing or, again, holding on to this man, I see a woman who's not thinking clearly, all right, and not understanding what she is getting herself into. Another thing I want you to consider that we're going to lead into right now is, are you chasing love or are you chasing attention? All right. Now, again, there's some other things to discuss, but let's focus on this: love or attention. The reason why I felt the need to bring this up. Well, first, let me give an example or a story. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the show Family Matters. I believe that's the right. Yeah, Family Matters. That's the show with Steve Urkel and Laura and the Winslows, whatever, right? And so in the show, if you guys remember, Steve Urkel was all chasing Laura and wanted her badly. And she would always reject him. She didn't want him. You know, he's this nerdy kid, whatever. But then once Steve took his attention away from Laura, and then even took it further, gave his attention to another woman, Laura found herself wanting Steve. Now, some people will look at that and say, well, it's that you don't know what you had until it's gone, right? No, that's not what's going on there. What's going on there is sometimes as a woman, and this can happen to men too, despite your lack of desire for that person, their attention makes you feel good. All right. Their desire for you makes you feel good. So it's kind of like you enjoy, you're annoyed by it to a certain extent, but you kind of like it to a certain extent. Okay. And I'm not saying every situation. Sometimes it's flat out, you don't want none of that attention and the story. But I think from harmless individuals, sometimes it can feed the ego. It can feed the self-esteem. It feels good to a certain extent. Now, once it is taken away from you, it creates a void because that's no longer there. You're no longer getting your hit. It's almost like crack. I don't know what crack is really like, but I'm just assuming it's like crack. But anyways, they take it away from you, and now you want it. And then what unfortunately happens in the dynamic of relationships is, you now start to confuse your desire to have that energy, that attention being given back to you as, oh my gosh, I have feelings for this man. Oh my gosh, maybe I do love him. Oh my gosh, maybe I should be with him. Hell no. No. You are just craving the attention and desire he was giving you. And so you have to be careful to not confuse this with love. Listen, if it was, and let me take a step back and say this real quick. Do I think it is possible for a woman to have not fully embraced a man's efforts and his attention and his desire, right? And then when it was taken away, wake up to the reality of, dang, I am into this guy. I think it's possible on the premise of, sometimes a woman is extremely guarded and her fear of being vulnerable and letting that man in causes her to reject his attempts, his attention, so on and so forth. And there's a part of her, part of you, that may have not processed the fact that at some point this man is going to give up. This man's going to go away. And so in a way, you're taking for granted his love, his attention, his desire. And then once it's gone, it snaps you out of that fear, so to speak, or it shifts you into a different type of fear of, oh my gosh, rather than I'm afraid to open up to him, I'm afraid of the reality that I've lost him. And this can now awaken in you or open the doors to you, allowing this man in. So that is a possible scenario. But what you have to understand as trying to decipher which one it is what was at the root of your lack of desire. Only you can answer that. So in the Steve Urkel Family Matters example, we don't know Laura. We don't know how her mind or where her mind was, but we can assume that her lack of desire was a lack of attraction, his nerdiness, so on and so forth. So there's no reason for me to believe that her now feeling some kind of way and wanting him is due to genuine love now being awakened or being allowed to be fruitful in the situation. Whereas if you have a guy that, no, you were attracted to him, you actually did like him, you actually had a level of desire, but again, you struggle with allowing yourself to embrace it. Now we can make the argument that this is a genuine transition that has occurred. But going back to the original main point, you've got to make sure that in the scenarios where you find yourself chasing this guy or again, holding on to this guy, is it about love or his attention? Now, here's something else that hit my spirit that I need to mention. Also ask yourself, is it love or is it guilt? So here's the other thing that happens to a lot of women. Sometimes you're dealing with a guy, whether you like him or not, there may be some desire there, whatever the case may be. And maybe you're dating him, you're getting to know him. But at some point, you feel like you messed up. You made a mistake that hurt him. You made a mistake that pushed him away, or a decision on your part that maybe you thought at that time was a good idea and it wasn't. And now you find yourself desperately wanting him because you desperately want to make things right. You desperately want to correct the wrongs. You're being fueled by your guilt of what happened in the situation, not actual love of the man, not actual connection, not true desire that's going to create a healthy relationship. No, you just don't want this situation to end on the note that you made a mistake. Now listen, I understand it's a hard pill to swallow when we feel like we pushed away someone of quality or a quote unquote good thing. Doesn't mean it was the right thing. So it may be a blessing that you pushed him away or whatever the case may be. However, it's still a hard pill to swallow at that time. And it gets harder to swallow when we feel like we haven't found a better option, when we feel like things are not panning out for us. And so now we start thinking back to that person that was good, but again, it didn't work out because we did things wrong, or we at least start to perceive it as something about us that we could have done better, right? And it may be accurate that we contributed to the problem, but you've got to understand the difference between, again, guilt, fear, loneliness, these things creating a desire of this man that is not rooted in truly being with that specific man. And you cannot allow the guilt to trap you. And now, again, because things like guilt and even the need for attention can create this pattern of constantly thinking about him, constantly wanting him around, that can fool you into thinking, I love him. No, you don't. It's just an unhealthy attachment. And you got to recognize when you're dealing with unhealthy attachments in this situation that is causing you to, again, either chase or hold on to this man that you need to let go of. All right, so we've now considered, is he really worth your time? We've considered, are you chasing love or attention, or is it guilt, unhealthy attachment? But let's consider the fact that for a second, even though I'm telling you stop chasing him, and that still holds true, but I also put on the title, he's not the one for you. But consider this for a second. Maybe he is the right guy, but it's not the right time. So here's the thing. I do firmly believe in right person, wrong time. There are tons of people out there who may disagree. You're more than welcome to leave your comment below on what your thoughts are if you agree with the right person, wrong time. But let me break it down for you like this. I think that I've seen it for myself, and I believe it from what I understand from a spiritual perspective, that we may cross paths in life. And some people will immediately jump in and say, well, why would you cross paths with someone who isn't right for you? Why essentially would God bring them into your life when it's not time for it? Well, maybe it's to wake you up. Maybe it's to show you the blessing that exists, but the preparation that's going to be required to properly receive and sustain that blessing. So you got to understand that as individuals, as human beings, we are at different points in our life. And sometimes we have experienced a lot of hurt and disappointment. Almost everybody has to some extent. Some have healed and moved past it. Some are still dwelling in it. That might be you. And unfortunately, when we then cross paths with that person, we can't simply assume that finding the right person makes everything else right. It doesn't mean all the circumstances will be what it needs to be. It doesn't mean what's going on within us, lack of healing, and other issues that we might be working through are going to magically disappear because we now met the right person. No, in actuality, if you try to move forward with this right individual, with this right man, when it is not properly timed to make things happen. And when I say properly timed, look at it like this, because even if you don't want to look at it from a spiritual timing, look at it from a foundational timing, all right? If the proper foundation has not been set, and that's you knowing yourself, that's you being healed, that's you truly being in a place to fully open your heart, be vulnerable, and embrace love at its fullest, because that's what's going to be required to have a healthy, amazing relationship with the right person. So when that foundation is not completely properly in place, if you try to have a relationship with that quote unquote right person, it can still turn toxic. Don't get it twisted. Right person does not guarantee nothing goes wrong. It does not guarantee that we will not have battles. It just means that this is the person we can fight the battles with. But again, we may not have been properly trained. It's almost like someone going to the army. They ain't even been through boot camp yet, and you want to throw them at the front line of the war. They're not ready for that. They need a level of training. And unfortunately, because it is very common for individuals to start to give up hope that the right one even exists, it's very easy for us to now stop or lose sight of the preparation that's needed, okay? And lose sight of what we should be doing in our life to make sure we can have success when the time comes. And so I've seen plenty of couples where they met, let's say, in their 20s. Not that it always happens in your 20s, it can happen in your 30s. But the point is, they met, let's say, in their 20s, let's say in college, just in this example, and they both lacked maturity. They both lacked an understanding of how to properly navigate things, and it led to them falling apart. But then let's say in this example that I'm thinking about, after 7 years apart, they went their separate ways, but they got themselves together. Now, in this situation, I'm not going to say they got themselves together thinking I'm doing it expecting to meet my right person again, right? But they did it for themselves. They did it for their own self-growth. And then they happened to come back around, and now they were able to come together and have an amazing relationship. And what I firmly believe is that when we have a genuine connection, when they are that quote unquote right person, it always comes back around. It always shows itself when opportunity comes to you once again. The issue for most people is that when the opportunity comes back around, are you still not ready? Or have you now gotten yourself in relationships you don't belong in? Have you now added other factors to the situation? Kids now, a marriage, all these, you moved to a different place maybe you don't even belong in. There's so many now additional barriers that have been created because people just went about doing things their own way rather than keeping sight of doing what's truly best for them from within, truly finding themselves, healing, but even more importantly, as I always believe, talking and trusting God. Talking to God and trusting Him and finding out what God wants you to do in the situation. So all that to say, listen, even if he's the right guy, right? And it's just right guy, wrong time. Chasing and holding on to that's not going to work. And when I say holding on to that's not going to work, actively holding on to it. It doesn't mean I want you to eliminate all hope in your mind. Because I think when we truly love someone, when we have a connection, there's always going to be something in us that has a little hope left, right? But what I'm asking you to do is to not put the situation in your hands, to go to God, to trust God, to lean on God's guidance, to also focus on how do you get to a better place so that when the time is right, you too can make this whole thing work. And understand that our timing is never better than God's timing. So you've got to be patient in the process. But again, you have to be in a process of preparation, not just let me just do whatever I want and think everything's going to work itself out. Now, an additional thing to kind of help you evaluate, are you simply dealing with someone who's not for you, or is he the right guy? And that is to get your copy of the book, The Man God Has for You, 7 Traits to Help You Determine Your Life Partner. It is a best-selling book, thousands of reviews on my site and on Amazon. You can get your copy below, click the link in the description or in the comment section, or go to themangodhasforyou.com. So let's keep this going. A few more things that I felt needed to be highlighted and I want you to consider and remember is, number one, the other reason why chasing is so bad or overly pursuing is because when you do, you will overlook the red flags. So I mentioned it earlier, but let's talk more about it. The unfortunate reality is that what I've seen with a lot of women is that once a woman decides, for whatever reason, she wants this man, she wants to make it work, there is a tendency to now rationalize past red flags or overlook them. It really isn't an issue of not seeing them. Women, I say this with all confidence, y'all are smart as hell. And when I say smart as hell, you ladies pick up on everything. You catch it. Things don't really get past a woman. The issue becomes, will she embrace what she's seeing? Will she embrace her intuition? Will she allow herself to accept the reality of the red flags? Not that she simply doesn't see it. Now, again, I don't want to rule out the exception to the rule and say maybe there are some situations where the woman completely saw nothing. Anything is possible. But in most cases, you saw something or you will see something. And so when you get too locked in, and that's why I wanted to make clear that chasing isn't just how some of you are processing it, this active pursuit of this man. I also want you to think of it from a mental and emotional standpoint of, in your head, you're overly pursuing. In your head, you're overly locked into this guy, all right? To the point where, again, you are ignoring everything. Now, I feel the need to say this because, again, it's hitting my spirit. I don't want you to confuse the words being overly locked in or overly pursuing with the reality that if you are dealing with a man who is pouring back into you, you're good. If you truly feel this is the right guy, you're in the right place, and we'll talk about how to really, another thing to do to figure that out, then okay. Because there is a level, you have to be vulnerable, you have to be completely open. I think the key point is he's pouring back into you. He is receptive to what you are giving to him, and he's giving it back. That is the key to understanding the difference between when you're over pursuing and when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. All right? And we have to understand that. But even in a situation where you feel like the man is pouring into you, I want you to pour back. I want you to be completely open, but I don't want you to be blind. I don't want you to make excuses for issues. And consider this. Sometimes addressing because sometimes we don't want to address the issue. And I say we because I think it's a human issue. We don't want to address the issue because we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to throw off what we feel is a good thing right now, or we don't want to scare off the person. So we fear bringing this issue up. And maybe because you've experienced that when you try to address issues and red flags, you got backlash, you got negative reactions. But I say to you now, if he is truly right for you, if he is truly serious about you, he's not going to have an issue with you addressing what you are perceiving as a red flag. And when it's all said and done, it may have just been a misunderstanding. It may be an easily correctable issue for him. Once he understands what you need and what you're looking for, he's into you, he'll make adjustments. But you've got to address it. So Do not get so locked in that you become blind to it. But I do want you to fully pour into this man if he is pouring into you. But getting back to the main point, when you chase, it is very easy to lose sight of things. And that's why you want to be mindful. Move forward with your eyes open and be aware and be honest with yourself about what you're feeling and what you're seeing in that situation. Now, here's another thing to consider, all right? Whether he is or he is not the one for you, if you have a strong desire for this man, though I am telling you not to chase him, I do want you to let him know how you feel. Now, some of y'all might have just said, oh, hell no. I ain't putting myself out there like that. Relax. Listen. You have to be willing, or you should be willing to present your interest, to present your desire, to let it be known. Because there are many situations that if a woman just spoke up, she would have gotten everything she was hoping for. But in being closed off and being fearful and not being transparent, she has either caused damage or self-sabotage that situation in some way, shape, or form. And so understand that the man who desires you or has interest in you, he wants to hear that from you as well. And I know it can be scary. I know it can be tough, but you've got to be willing to open up and do it. But here's the beautiful thing about you letting him know how you feel. And let me say this before I mention the beautiful thing, because I already hear y'all in the back of my mind saying, if I let him know how I feel and he doesn't feel that way about me, he will use it to his advantage to play me. Yes and no. Number one, not every man's going to do that. Will some men do that? Yes. But he can only play you if you allow it. Meaning, even if he tries to use this information to his advantage, knowing you have high desire for him, the key is always paying attention. Is he matching your energy? Is he reciprocating your desire? Is he making the efforts you make? Is he pouring back into you? If he's not doing that, then yes, whether you let him know how you feel or not, you shouldn't be dealing with him. If he's unwilling to give back to you the way you give to him in this essence of the effort, the energy, the love, the positivity, and things of that nature, then don't bother with him. But that should not be the reason to let him know how you feel, because that's not what determines him actually playing you and how that plays out. But going back to why it's such a beautiful thing is because it is one of the great ways to actually weed out who is really into you and who isn't. Because let me tell you this, though women have this fear of, if I let him know I'm really into him and he's not, he's going to try to play me. Most men don't want to try to play, they don't want to try to hold on to this woman who's being all deeply into them. I say most, I didn't say all. but most, because that is too messy. That's too much. He'd rather deal with a more detached woman. He'd rather deal with a woman who can quote unquote play her position, accept the casualness that he desires, and not be all into him and all wants more out of him. Okay? That's the preferred route when a guy's just trying to be casual and have fun and whatever the case may be. So in actuality, you letting him know you feel this way, if that's how you generally feel about him, and he does not feel that way, you actually can push a lot of men out the door. You can actually allow yourself to not have your time be as wasted, because these men will look for a quote unquote easier target or easier to deal with woman in the sense of what is going to be expected and required emotionally. All right. But on the flip side, if he is into you, you've now strengthened the relationship or the potential of it. You've now allowed him to feel desired and validated and feel more secure about pouring into you, because now he knows I'm pouring into a woman that wants me the same way I want her. And that gives him confidence, that gives him freedom. So you actually are allowing yourself to see better results by being willing to let the man know how you feel. All right, so I got two more points I want to make. And so one, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but let's talk about it real quick. Your healing is blinding you. So when I see a woman who's chasing, overly locked in, getting caught up in these situations, I don't think I've ever seen this with a woman that truly, fully healed from her past. That's just the reality of it. Again, I think when a woman is healed, she can be present in the situation. She can allow herself to be vulnerable and open. All right. She is willing to show that desire, all these things that I think are healthy and necessary. But she doesn't lose herself in the situation. Because chasing, overly pursuing, getting overly locked in, you lose yourself when you do that. Or it's very easy to do that. That's what happens to most people. All right. And so this will not happen when you have the strength or when you have gone through the process of healing from your past. Notice I keep saying your past, not your previous relationship, not just men you have romantic dealings with. No, your past. That means childhood too. Parents, siblings, friends, anything that hurt you. It is necessary to ensure or to make sure that you go through the process of getting that out of your system, because those broken childhoods lead to broken relationships, lead to broken marriages, lead to entertaining people who don't belong in your life, lead to trying to hold on to a man who isn't worth your time. This is the result of not facing our hurt. So I know it can be scary, but it is a necessary part of the process if you are either in the situation right now where you feel like you are essentially chasing by the way that I've explained it, or to ensure that you don't find yourself in that situation. Okay? So I encourage you to go through that. It's another book. I'm just going to mention it, Love After Heartbreak. I'm not going to show it right now, but another book you can check out on my site, which will give you the process to healing. But make sure, regardless of chasing or not, healing is the key to your success in life. And so I highly encourage you to embrace it. Now, last but not least, if you know me, then you know it was going to come up at some point. What does God have to say about this? That, to me, is possibly the most important thing, aside from healing, is you connecting with what does God want you to do? Because I'll say this right now with a lot of confidence, all right? And I could be wrong, but I believe I'm not. and that is, God did not put you, the woman, to be chasing no man on this earth. Plain and simple. That is not to say that I think men should be chasing women. Let me just get that out the way real quick. I do not believe in chasing either way. I believe in two people running towards each other to build a healthy and amazing relationship. Two people putting a mutual effort to build a healthy and amazing relationship. No one should be chasing, right? But again, let's just focus on you. God did not put you here to be chasing. So when I see a woman behaving in this way, what comes to me, or what I start to think, is you are not consulting with God. You are not praying. You are allowing your emotions to get the best of you rather than taking a step back, going in prayer and seeking guidance on how to move forward. Now, I have seen situations where women will say to me, God told me this is my husband, or God told me this is the man for me. I'm not here to argue with anyone on if they genuinely feel God said this is the one for them. My only questions or concerns are, one, did you come to that conclusion based off interpretation of signs and events? Or is that the answer you received in your spirit? All right? Because I've seen a lot of people put together all kinds of puzzle pieces that didn't really fit to come to the conclusion they wanted, rather than really be able to go in prayer and say, no, this is what I got within my spirit. All right? Number two, even if God did say that's your guy, what did God say about handling the situation? How to proceed in it? So again, could it be right guy, wrong time? Could it be, okay, that's the guy for you, but God is not telling you to chase the man. There's some other things you got to do to make this all play out and work out the way that it needs to work out. So if you're going to say to me, I did talk to God, I do believe this is the man for me. All right, then the next question to ask in prayer is, how do I proceed? What is the role I have to play in this situation? And sometimes, many times possibly, God will tell you to chill out, relax. It'll be taken care of. But there's still other things you're going to have to do. So either way, I do believe there's always a role that we play in bringing forth our blessing, so to speak, or getting to our blessing. All right. And then the last thing I'm going to mention about this God piece is make sure you're not scapegoating God. All right. I want you to go to God. I want you to pray. I want you to embrace the spiritual aspect of living your life to your fullest. However, I do not want you to hide behind God. I do not want you to use God as a shield to defend and validate actions and behaviors that he didn't really co-sign. All right. And again, I'm saying co-sign as you, just as long as you can say to me, you went in prayer and talked about this to God, so be it. I'm not arguing with anything like that because I don't know. I'm not in your prayer to tell you didn't hear that or you did hear this, whatever the case may be. Only you know the truth. But make sure you're doing it from a genuine heart and you're taking the right approach to gaining the clarity that you need so that you won't find yourself chasing men who don't belong in your life and that you will understand when he's simply not the one for you. So there's a quote that says, men chase women, not the other way around. And it goes on to say some other things, but I don't want to talk about that. What I want to focus on is this idea of men needing to chase women. And the reality is that many of you have been told that, to let that man chase you. And you're trying to figure out, how do I make that work? How do I make this happen? But there's a lot that comes with this that I don't think is being properly explained. And I want to dive deeper into that. Now, this video was prompted because I received a DM from a young lady who came to me about her struggle with being told that when she meets a guy that she really likes, that you should make him work for you, because men appreciate what they have to work for, what they have to put energy into. And she said the struggle is for her that she doesn't want to have to make a man do that because it's in her nature to want to love and pour out. And she feels like it's such a conflicting thing that she has to basically fight herself on. So she wanted to get my guidance on it. And I said, okay, you know what? Let me do a video and she encouraged it because the reality is that so many of you are facing this issue or being told this is the way to go. So I'm going to give you the ultimate answer, but let's start breaking this stuff down. So number one, let's talk about the idea that men are hunters and they like a challenge. So here's the thing. In general, this is a true statement. What I mean by that is, yes, I do believe that most men, the average man, is wired to desire a level of challenge, wanting to conquer something. This feeds a man, you could say, his ego. It makes him feel accomplished. He feels good. And so a lot of men pursue this or pursue getting this fix, so to speak, in various ways. Some men are very much into sports. And this is where they can get that challenge and that chance to conquer something. They may get into fighting like boxing or UFC or all these various things, right? And another common one that you see a lot of times is men playing video games. Because the reality is that in playing video games, and I'm not sitting here saying men should be all consumed by video games, because I know some of y'all hate it, right? I'm just saying that the reality is that many of them find that challenge in the video game and that chance to conquer. But the problem is we're applying this mentality and this truth to relationships. And this is where things get a little tricky. Because let's go back to the example of men liking video games. So picture it for a second. Man, young or old, whatever, into his video games, finds this new video game that he wants really bad. And his whole thing is to beat this game. And he may spend days and hours and weeks and months just trying to pour everything into conquering this game. And then once the man finally reaches the pinnacle and beats the game, what does he do? He throws the game away and looks for a new game to play. So for you as a woman to believe that men want a challenge and something to conquer and something they have to put their work in when it comes to relationships, where you're asking him to transfer this mentality he has with video games onto you. Do you want to be conquered then thrown away? Because when you look at situations where men have chased women, this happens a lot. It gets to a point where he goes super hard trying to get you. He'll jump through all your hoops. He will, run through any obstacles you put in his way. And we will discuss later in the video what's driving a man in many cases to do all that, because it's not what you think. So please keep watching. But he does all that, finally gets the woman, and then now the effort stops. Now it's your turn. Because in that man's mind, once he's conquered his game, once he's conquered this challenge, he's supposed to just reap the rewards. It ain't no continuously working. Working for what? I did all the work to get you. Why do I need to keep doing all this work to keep you? That's how he's going to process it in many situations. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Yes, but those exceptions usually aren't healthy. And again, we'll get to that. So I bring this point to you to make you aware of the fact that when we're talking about relationships, romantic, healthy relationships, we really should not want or encourage men to approach it from their innate desire for challenge and conquest, because that does not transfer well into romantic relationships. And here's another reason why it won't transfer well, in the sense of why it doesn't work out this way, is because once a man is emotionally invested, and when I say emotionally invested, more specifically, he is in love with a woman, or he is deeply into a woman, all right? He is emotionally invested to where he is now emotionally vulnerable. This idea of him wanting to chase and have a challenge goes completely out the window. If you were to survey men, and I'm saying you can go talk to men who are family members, friends, whoever, who have ever been in love. And this is very important. You can't ask a man who's never been deeply into a woman, because again, he in that situation may remain in that conquer mindset challenge, and he'll actually validate this idea that men just want a challenge. No, talk to a man who's been deeply in love or into a woman and ask them, did you want the woman you were deeply into to be a challenge? Did you want her to make you chase after her? You're going to get no's. The majority of men, if not all of them, will say no. Because now when you are in that state of being emotionally invested, because let me back this up a little bit, because some of y'all may look at chase very differently. One, remember that chasing is very much a one-sided affair, all right? It is essentially, there is resistance on one side, or there is, as I mentioned earlier, obstacles that one may put up because you have to pursue the, and again, these words, pursue, chase, all these things, I feel like they get really mixed up, and that's what changes people's perception of it. So let's throw away the word chase for a second and just look at it like this. If you make the man have to jump through hoops, if you give him resistance, if you are not making a mutual effort with him, this will all fall under the title of chasing, as I'm speaking about it. And when you are doing that to a man who is actually serious about you, your resistance hurts. Your resistance makes him question, are you really interested? Your resistance can give him flashbacks to the last time he got played. And we'll get into that as well. So much goes wrong now when this is being applied to someone who is serious about you. If you're just trying to make the guy who is just infatuated with you, who just wants to have sex with you, let's just call it out for what it is, then it doesn't have the same downfall. It doesn't have the same issues, but that already is an unhealthy dynamic, all right? But when you're doing it to the guy who cares genuinely, you're gonna set yourself up for more failure. And so you've got to really ask yourself, again, if it was you, if we turned the tables, Would you want a man who you're really into to make you chase him? Of course not. Now, again, some of y'all might say, well, we're the women, he's the man, so it's different. I get it. But again, when we're applying love, genuine interest, being actually emotionally invested on this level, nobody wants to deal with that. So you run into a lot of problems and you start to plant a lot of negative seeds when you embrace this mindset of cheating. So going back to the question that the woman in the DMs asked me, when a man is the right guy, you don't have to do all this with him. But I'm going to put a pin in that. I'm going to explain more of that later. Let's break down more of this making him chase you. So a second thing I want you to consider with this whole make him chase you ideology is that grown adults don't have time to chase. All right. Now, I'm not trying to say that to be insulting to anyone who believes in chasing. I'm saying that to break it down like this. What I have observed in all my years of doing this is that the willingness to chase and the embracing of this dynamic decreases with age. And we're going to speak specifically to men's willingness to chase the woman. When the man is young, so let's start as early as high school, he's much more willing to do this whole chasing thing. Why? One, because he hasn't been hurt yet. And when a man hasn't been hurt yet and he meets that woman he's all into, whether it's real love, whether it's infatuation, whatever it is, he does not have the trauma, if we're going to call it for what it is, that will cause him to be more hesitant and less likely to pursue when he feels like he found something special. So in his youth, he's willing to go all in. Not to mention, well, let's stay with that for a second. But as that man gets older, and the likelihood of him having been put through the ringer more, having gone through more experiences where he may have been let down, he may have been hurt, or seeing other men get hurt. And I'm sure for some of you, this all sounds familiar because for many of you, this has been your trajectory. Where when you were younger, you were much more open to love. If you think back for many of you, not all, because there's a lot of other issues that happen to some people in their childhood that changes the direction of these things. But for many of you, that first love, you were much more willing to dive head in first. But as time goes on and you experience more, you become more hesitant. You become more cautious. And I think, unfortunately, women don't understand what men are going through as well, or have gone through, many of them, that makes them just as scared, just as hesitant, just as cautious. And where they have seen this chase that they once engaged in backfire on them, all right, in many different ways. So again, as he gets older, his willingness to engage decreases and decreases and decreases. And I think some women are thinking, well, no, if he finds the woman that he is so serious about, nothing will hold him back. Because I'm sure you've heard that. When a man wants you, nothing will stop him. I'm sorry, that's not true. That's not true as we age as adults and we go through more things and people have gone through experiences that they have not healed from. Now, this isn't to say that the men should not go get healing. It isn't to say that they shouldn't be at a place where they are less fearful of pursuing love or something special, but it's to speak to the reality of what so many are facing and why this chasing dynamic does not work. Or it causes, and it causes all kinds of other issues. Now, another aspect to, as the man gets older, he has less of a willingness to chase because he's now gone through more. Well, also because as he gets older, in most cases, not all, he has more responsibility. There's more on his plate. There's more he has to concern himself with. So when that guy is young, whether it be high school or college years or whatever, and maybe he doesn't even have a job yet, okay? Or he does and it's part-time, whatever. He got all the time in the world to chase. He can pursue you in all the ways that you want, call you all the time. And for some of you, you may have gotten so conditioned to that treatment that as time goes on, you kind of forget that, it's going to change as a man gets older and is doing more with himself. So now he is not in the same position he once was to even engage in this level of quote unquote chasing. And when you add less time to even trauma as well, well, then here we go. A man's willingness to have to do this is like, no, I'm not going to do it. So we've got to realize that this is not, and I'm going to use the word game. We shouldn't be playing any games. And if you've been watching my videos, you know I don't advocate for games. I advocate for going about things in a healthy, loving, positive manner so that both sides can win in this and both sides can receive what's truly best for them. But again, this chasing thing is a game, but there's more for you to consider. So this is going to piggyback off where I kind of just ended with the last point. Let's talk a little bit more about the man who has time to chase versus the man who does not. So one of the unfortunate things I see a lot of women do, and I want to encourage you to stop doing it, all right, is basing your decision on the man you'll be with. You're allowing your decision to be based off of who is showing you more effort. Now, hear what I'm saying, because I don't want that to be misconstrued. Because of course, every man who is serious about you or who claims to be serious has to be willing to put forth effort. All right. He has to be willing to pour into you. No doubt. There's no excuse for that. I'm not making, whatever. That has to be there. However, when I say choosing the man who makes more effort, let's put it in a more specific example. So again, let's say a woman, she meets two guys. They're both really great guys, both really nice guys. And let's just say one is a little bit more desirable, Let's say he's a successful man. He works a lot of hours. He is less available. He is putting forth an effort, but again, because he has less time to give, it's not as much as the other guy who's a great guy, doesn't have as much going on as far as work and success. He has more hours available to give. And in those more hours available to give, he's calling a lot more. You know what I'm saying? He's want to see you a lot more. He just has more time. And so a lot of women will say, well, this guy wants me more, so I'm going to be with him. All right. Even though despite they may have a greater desire for the other guy, even though despite they may feel something stronger both ways with the other guy, but the guy who is pursuing you more feels safer because again, he's putting forth all this effort. And since he's willing to chase, all right, because let's just say you're showing them both a little bit of resistance because you want to see if they step up, so to speak, if they chase. And the guy who has less going on does. But what you aren't realizing is that, one, the safe choice is usually the wrong choice. Almost always the wrong choice. So if you're choosing guy A, guy making more effort in this example, then you're choosing him for the wrong reasons. And it's going to be a setup for disaster. Because there is not a mutual desire strong enough from both sides that will sustain this relationship. You're really banking off of his strong desire to carry this relationship for y'all. All right. You're willing to give something, but he doesn't open your whole heart up to him. He does not do that for you. All right. And so you're also possibly going to overlook the fact that, again, his extra effort doesn't always equate to genuine, true love or desire. Because think about this for a second. How many of you have either been in or seen a woman dealing with a toxic man, and that man won't let go for nothing? He will chase her to the end of the earth. He will hold on for dear life. Is that because he loves her? No, because once he has her, he continues to mistreat her. He continues to be toxic. So clearly, this is not love that's driving him. It may be infatuation. It may be because he needs her in certain ways. And that need makes him say, I will overlook the fact that I have to be the one to keep drawing her back in, because he is focused on what he is going to receive by getting you, how the fruits of conquering having you back in his life. All right. The man who loves you or who's genuinely into you is not just worried about what he gets from you. He's concerning himself with what he's pouring into you. And when you're resistant to that, or bottom line, when you're resistant to that and he has to chase, that again hurts a lot more. All right? Because he wants you to receive him. Think about when you are really into someone, you want them to receive your love. And when they're holding back, they're kind of blocking it off. And that makes anyone, I don't care who you are, that makes you feel some kind of way. That can happen in romantic relationships. That can happen with your children. You name it. No one wants to feel like the person they're trying to pour love into is being resistant to it. All right. And again, when we're talking about grown adults and romantic relationships, that will make him question even more. Does she even want me here? So while you're evaluating these two men on who's giving more effort, you don't realize that the one who really cares is evaluating yours too. And he's not seeing I almost said the word wrong. He's not getting the reciprocation, all right, that he's looking for. So therefore, that messes with his head. He can't do this. The guy who just wants to, I was going to say own you. And I really want to use that word because I feel like some of those guys, that's really in their head. They want to own and control you. So they don't care what you're not giving back right now because they know once they have you in their grasp, they're going to get what they want out of you. And that's simply unhealthy. So all that to say, when we fall into this mindset of the chase being what shows if the man is serious about, that's wrong. And we have to go deeper than that to understand which is the man you should really be with. Because again, I've seen this happen tons of times where men choose that where women choose that man who's doing so much, but they're blind to the fact that what his intent is not coming from the right place. And they're confusing that with actual love. So now, again, there's so much to unpack. So we got some more to talk about. We're going to keep this going. So the next thing I want you to consider. So I've been studying these relationships for a very long time. And I've seen 3 reasons why a woman allows a man to chase her. All right? I'm going to give you 2, and there's one we're going to wait till the end to dissect. But let's start with the first one. The first one is because you're not really that interested in him. So let's talk about it. So here's the thing. One thing I've seen with women is that when you're really into a guy, when you really like him and you believe this is potential, you have to fight yourself to not do too much, all right? Y'all are literally in the mirror coaching yourselves like, girl, don't call him. Don't do it. Hold on. You're calling your friends, hoping they'll talk you off the ledge. You are fighting the urge to want to pour in because you're excited. There's something there. You feel strongly, even when it may not actually be real love. If you have a strong enough desire and have a high enough value of this man, you are a little bit more antsy to want to do because it's part of your nature to want to pour into someone that you highly desire, care about, in love with, whatever the case may be. So when you are able to sit back and do nothing and let this man, quote unquote, chase you, a lot of times because you're not really feeling him like that. A lot of times it's because you're convincing yourself to give him a chance. And you're allowing his willingness to chase to validate that chance, to validate how far you'll go with him. Because again, it is kind of a safety valve for you. Well, if he does chase me that much, then he must really want me. So I think I can give him a shot because this should be safe here. But no. But again, going back to the main point, ask yourself, how interested are you in him? Now, here's the unfortunate reality. There have been millions of women who have married a man they weren't truly in love with. There have been millions of women who have gotten in, who are currently in relationships with men they are not truly in love with or even deeply into. I got stories for days of what women have allowed into their lives or the types of relationships they have accepted for various reasons, all right? And it isn't to come down on y'all. It's to point out this reality in hopes that you will not continue that pattern or fall into that pattern. All right. But this happens all the time. And so you've got to be careful. And part of what contributes to that, again, there's various things, like sometimes because he's chasing or because he's showing so much effort, you may have family and friends try to convince you, he loves you, he cares about you, you should be with him, blah, 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 blah. And I don't say blah, blah, blah to be, I don't want to come off a certain kind of way, but at the same time, it's blah, 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 because though they have good intentions, they're setting you up for failure. And many women succumb to that pressure and accept that man without the proper foundation, and then the whole thing blows up. And then I have to say this because then society sees these examples, not knowing what's really going on behind closed doors, not knowing the missing ingredients that always were missing, that were known to be missing, having this information, just seeing what was presented on the surface as this quote unquote great looking relationship that all of a sudden falls apart, and now people become jaded to love. They become jaded to relationships. They think this doesn't work for anybody. No, it doesn't work for so many because so many are taking the wrong approach. Because so many are overlooking the essential things that need to be in place to have success. Because people are rushing into situations they don't belong in or settling in situations they don't belong in. And that's why I do videos like this, because I'm trying to help stop that. Because if we can, then we can have more healthy, successful relationships. But ultimately, for this point that I'm making is that, yes, you have to ask yourself, if I'm so cool with sitting back and making him chase me, why? I got some other reasons why, but again, one of those questions has to be, am I really into this man? Because if you're not, why even try to gain his attention? Why even try to go down this path? It's a setup for disaster one way or another. All right, so now here's the second reason why I see a lot of women letting a man chase her, is because it's a defense mechanism. Plain and simple. So let's just say you are into this guy, all right? You are feeling him, so that's not the problem. But you're still in this mindset of he needs to chase me. Why? Why is because to you, again, you're looking for his chase to validate opening up to him. You're looking for his chase to validate embracing this relationship. You're looking for this chase to give you some, I have to use this word, false sense of security. That he is safe and that you can trust that he desires you enough that you think that gives you either a better chance or that, you can feel confident that he won't cheat on you, he won't betray you, whatever. Because like if for him to want it that bad, he must not be trying to mess this up. And unfortunately, that's not how it usually plays out. A lot of times the same dude, and again, it's not to say every man who chased a woman turns out to do some horrible stuff, but there's tons of examples of it. Because again, you have to ask yourself, what makes a man even chase? We're not even going to get, I've mentioned it a little bit, infatuation, obsession, and there's some other things, but let's get back to defense mechanism. So again, I've seen women sometimes when I've talked about these things fight me so hard on, no, these men need to chase. They're soft these days. What's wrong with these men? Be honest. You are doing that because you don't want to have to put yourself out there. Let's be real. And I understand. I get it, but let's not try to hide behind these ideologies that don't truly apply here, that aren't truly efficient, that do not prove to be highly successful, when the reality is that you are just trying to protect yourself. But you have to understand, I say it all the time, the same walls you have up to protect you are the same walls blocking your blessings. If you are acting out of a defense mechanism mindset, then the reality is that you have been hurt and you have not healed. All right? And if you want to have a healthy, successful relationship, you have to heal. You cannot stay behind that wall and think it's okay. And here's something that's hidden in my spirit that I have to mention. You think that if you let him chase you, that this will give you the green light to accept being with him. And you think that that would mean it would earn your love, it would earn maybe your femininity, it would earn these things that he wants, right? And then as long as he's doing what he's supposed to do, you're good. But that's the problem. As long as he's doing what he's supposed to do, if you have not healed whatever that thing was that caused you to have a wall up, caused you to have a defense mechanism, then at some point in the relationship, you're going to be triggered because he is a human being who will make mistakes. There is no person, no one who will be 100% on point for the rest of their life. It doesn't happen. It does not exist. So the minute this man does anything wrong, it could be a genuine mistake. But the minute he does anything wrong, the minute he does anything that reminds you of what you've been through, your wall will go back up. And now you will validate to yourself that I am allowed to keep my wall up because you messed up. But he can't win that battle because your wall was created from your past hurts. He may have, again, triggered it to come back up, but he didn't create it. But he sure as hell paying the price for it. And so now y'all going to have this issue and this clash and everything's going to go left. And again, you will not be able to have a successful, healthy relationship. His chase does not chase away your past disappointments. It doesn't chase away the trauma you've been through. He cannot get that out of your system. Only you can. So you've got to be willing to check yourself and say, okay, I got to come into this healthy. And if I am, again, using this, a man must chase me, and be honest with yourself, as a defense mechanism, then we need to get to the root of that issue and make some changes. All right. So I know I'm giving y'all a lot. All right. And remember, I do this with love. I care about y'all. So none of this is to make you feel, well, maybe it's to make you feel some kind of way, but in a good way, right? But it's not to hurt you in any kind of way. But anyways, so here's the other thing that I want you to think about when it comes to making this man chase you. The reality is that in engaging in this dynamic, you're not being true to yourself. And what I mean by that is this. Again, and let's be more specific. When we're engaging with a man, when you're engaging with a man who you actually really like and you're really into, what did I say earlier? There's a natural desire for most of you, if not all of you, to want to pour in, to want to do, to want to show up and be more present in that situation. And you making him chase is you fighting yourself to not do what comes natural to you, which now creates conflict and stress within you. All right. So let's put him to the side for a second. Think about the times that you have gone through playing these games of, I'm not going to call him. I'm going to wait till he calls me, or I'm going to make him do this and make him do that. How at peace were you during those situations? How comfortable were you during those situations? I would bet for the majority of you, if not all of you, it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't peaceful. It was stressful as hell. You didn't enjoy it. The only time there was any enjoyment was if he did actually do the action you were hoping for. Like once you finally got to that result, you can like let out a sigh of relief. But in that process, you were fighting yourself and it did not feel good. Why do that to yourself? It's not worth it. You know what I'm saying? And by you not being true to yourself, so not only are you stressing yourself out, making life more uncomfortable, and that can lead to a lot of other issues, physical ailments, you name it. But then because you're not showing up as your true self in the situation, you don't know if this man is really falling for who you really are or who you're presenting. And so if he, let's say, for example, likes the version of you that you've been showing that doesn't really hit him up and just lets him call you when he calls you, so to speak, right? And then now when you guys finally get a relationship, you finally want to be because naturally your real self is going to come out at some point. Now you start blowing this man's phone up because that's who you really are. Who you really are is you want the good morning call or text. You want to be checking in several times a day, whatever. And I'm not talking about whether that's right or wrong. I'm talking about some of y'all. That's what's important to y'all. Now he's like, this is too much because you weren't showing him this. So he thought he was getting that. And he was comfortable with that. This now is making him overwhelmed and uncomfortable. Now we have a new clash. Now we have fighting. Now the whole thing falls apart. We could have saved you all the drama and headache if you were just your true self from the beginning. We could have better evaluated if this man is truly for you and in alignment with you if you were just being yourself from the beginning. Now, I know what I'm hearing in my head, some of you are asking is, well, I like to give and pour in, but I don't want to be doing too much. And I do think there's a level of balance we can find in quote unquote doing too much. And I think I'll make a different video for what is doing too much, so to speak. But let me just say this. I do think that, again, the key is he reciprocating when you are doing? So it's not simply about don't do because you don't want to do too much. When you see women doing so much for the man, the problem is they're doing so much for him and he's not pouring back into her. So it's like you're letting your desire to give blind you from the fact that he doesn't give back. That's the problem. Because if you were pouring into him, whether someone considers it too much or not, if you were pouring into him, but this man was matching that energy and pouring right back into you, there'd be a lot less people having something to say. All right. And you would feel less, a ways about it because hell, you be getting rewarded. You wouldn't care. And so in being yourself, in pouring in, you'll get to see if he's willing to match your energy or not. But again, I know there's a lot more to that. We'll do another video on that, but let's keep this one going. All right. So now this is another point, and then I got one more bonus point that I want to add. All right. But this one here, when we talk about this whole making him chase you, what I want you to understand is you need to start how you want to finish. So this is what I mean by that. When you look at situations where people are chasing, and let's just say whether it's the man or the woman, because listen, there are women out there chasing after a man. Bottom line, I'm not saying they should be, but they are. And then there are some men chasing after a woman. And what you will typically find is that by starting off on such a lopsided dynamic, the relationship ends up that way. And it may not always end up one-sided as the same person who started off chasing. So sometimes, let's say it's the woman chasing the man. Well, you look deep into that relationship years later, she's still the one doing all the work. All right? Because she started how she's finishing. Sometimes it can flip. But what happens is, and I'll give you an example of how it can flip. So woman's chasing the man. All right, she reaches a point. She's tired of this. I can't take this anymore. Now she's willing to leave this man. In his panic, he don't want her to go. So now she has successfully flipped the tables, right? And I say successfully, not to encourage y'all to do this, to simply say that, yes, at this point, he's now fighting so hard to keep her. He is essentially now in the chasing role. Okay. And she's saying, yeah, you got to work to keep me. But that still has a shelf life that's very short. He's only going to fight so long. He's only going to put in so much effort. Once he's only doing this thinking, he's chasing thinking, once I reel her back in, we can go back to when she was doing all this stuff for me. All right. In most cases, once he sees it's not flipping back, oh, he's done. He leaves, or it reels her in and it does flip back. Either way, the point is when you start off one-sided, you end one-sided, and the relationship cannot be sustained and successful one-sided. So the goal has to be a mutual effort from the jump. When you sit down with people who are still madly in love with each other, happy, successful relationships, the vast majority, and I say majority because again, there's always exceptions to the rule, but the vast majority will tell you a story where they were both pouring into each other, where neither one had to chase, where they both couldn't wait to talk to each other and be around each other, and they both were willing to express themselves to each other. This is how you have success. This chasing stuff, it's game playing and it's unnecessary. So think about that. When you consider engaging in this kind of dynamic, what are you really setting yourself up for in the long run? All right. So now the bonus. And this is kind of a two-parter. All right. So remember I said there was 3 reasons why a woman is letting a man chase her in, if not all situations, the vast majority. I mentioned you're just not that interested. It's a defense mechanism. And the third thing is you're simply getting bad advice. So there's a lot of you who are just doing what you've been told and doing what people have convinced you makes sense. And here's the thing that people don't explain when it comes to these tips and tricks to get guys to do this or do that or whatever. They're very temporary. So it's like you can do some of these things people mention to make him chase you. But again, you're doing something that invokes a reaction right now, but then he can't sustain it. And so now what you find yourself is in this never-ending cycle of having to try to push certain buttons and trigger him to quote unquote chase you or to show you more attention or to do this or to miss you or whatever. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting because you don't want to have to constantly do that. And I mean, it's just an unhealthy dynamic to have to be in. So the reality is that you don't want to engage in things that just give you temporary results. You want to ask yourself what's going to give you long-term results. So going back to the bad advice, again, I know that there's some people out there who are well-intentioned, but they're leading you down a path to more problems. And you've got to ask yourself, when you are being given advice, does this really make the relationship better? All right? And also ask yourself, how would I feel if this was being done to me? The reality is that when we are being fed some of these tips and tricks, if we asked ourselves how we would feel if it was turned on us, we wouldn't like it. We would not want this. We would probably say, well, why can't they just talk to us? Why they just let me know? Why they have to play these games? So then why would you do the same thing? That doesn't make sense. So you got to understand that you got to put away this bad guidance that's only creating more unhealthy situations. And part 2 of this bonus is get God's guidance. You know me. You know I got to throw God in there. God's going to always be a part of it, baby. But listen, nah. So, but really, like you got to, when you're in this mindset of thinking, well, this man should chase me, because again, you know, one of the scriptures that people love to use is he who finds a wife. And they use that to validate the idea that the man should chase. But that scripture is not saying a man's supposed to chase a woman. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say this with confidence. God ain't never told me to chase a woman. Purpose is where my focus is supposed to be. God is where my focus is supposed to be. And I'm supposed to trust him in allowing, like when the woman comes, I'm supposed to be able to seek his guidance and be able to come into alignment with her. You don't have to chase what God sent. That quote doesn't just count for women. It's for men too. Nobody has to chase what God sent. So when there is an individual that you are really into and you're now thinking I have to engage in this game of whether it's chasing or whatever, stop and go talk to God. Does God really want you to do that? Because here's the crazy thing. In you becoming so consumed or concerned with making this man chase or evoke reactions out of him, you've now become distracted by this situation. You've now lost track of what you should be doing. God may have wanted to tell you, don't worry about all that. Go do this and I'm going to take care of the rest. And you over here trying to control the situation, putting your hands on it in a way that God does not want you to, in a way that's only going to create more mess. Now, this isn't to say that God's never going to tell a woman to, let's say, maybe approach a guy. I know some of y'all don't like that, but it's just real. Like he may lead you to approach. He may lead you to throw a hint. He may lead you to reach out to a man. That's not chasing. Don't confuse that with chasing. All right. So there may be actions you need to take. And of course, for the man, same thing. But the idea of having to chase something, again, going back to early definition, chasing is you're going after something that's showing you resistance. No, in most cases, that's not going to be what God is going to have you do. But I'm not God. So my encouragement to you is to go into prayer, to talk to God, let him speak to your spirit. I have to say this, even if you're not a believer, go within and listen to your inner voice. Remove the outside noise and trust the flow of life at times. We should not be so focused on things we cannot control, and we should not be trying to control people. We should just be seeking to see who we can align with, share life with, and experience an amazing relationship with. Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here, and I'll see you there. So I make a lot of videos breaking down the way men think, what it means when he does this, says that, how you should navigate those situations. And that's all well and good. And I'm going to continue to make videos like that. But I think it's very important